Good. Put it.
Good afternoon to all. Every year, World Environment Day is celebrated by the Department of Science, Technology and Environment, Government of Puducherry, focusing on a specific theme declared by UNEP. The theme for the year 2024 is Land Restoration, Desertification and Drought Resilience. As a mark of celebrating World Environment Day 2024, Puducherry Climate Change Cell is hosting a webinar to address the current environmental challenges of the present times. I welcome all the participants to this webinar. I now request Dr. N. Ramesh, Member Secretary, Puducherry Pollution Control Committee, to give the opening remarks for the webinar.
Good afternoon. Are you able to hear me? All the dignitaries on the web connected?
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
Yes. It is my great privilege, pleasure, and a proud moment to introduce a prominent personality in the field of environment, ecology, and nature conservation, Professor Ramanujam, who is the senior most research scholar in the field of various aspects of environment. Particularly, he has published many books related to sacred groves and biodiversity conservation of Puducherry. He is actually eminent, not only the writer, speaker to the various platform, and most of the research scholars in the field of environment definitely would aware about professors. He simplified and in-depth knowledgeable speech on various topics. It is really apt person the Puducherry Climate Change Cell has identified and introduced him for this World Environment Day related program. As Temari, Madam, given introduction speech, the DST is having various program on the eve of World Environment Day celebration. It starts with today first program. Continuously, we are having up to June 5th various program. The professor actually, his main research is on the sacred groves, conservation of nature, and other issues related to Puducherry. So actually Pondicherry, though it is very small, tiny places in the map of India, with only 292 square kilometer of land mass in the Puducherry region, and altogether Puducherry, Karaikal, Magi and Yanam 493 square kilometer. We are blessed with the various gift of God. We do have cropping land, wetland, marshy land, sand dunes, very beautiful mangroves, salt marsh, and somehow some forest area also. Okay, now professor will throw light on various component of this land because this year World Environment Day theme is particularly land. So we have addressed water, air, and waste management, single-use plastic, and biodiversity and all. Very rightly, the land is one of the important component of the environment, wherein all the features being built. If anything happen in the land, it will affect both water resource, air quality, as well as the biodiversity. So the land is the encompasses of all the component of the universe. So this is very apt title of this year to give important for this land conservation. So now I request Professor to throw more light on various component of land in Puducherry, which is facing various challenges and anthropogenic impact. Because of this population explosion, we have the limited land resource. It is being affected, challenged, and big question to our future generation. So I request our professor to throw more light on the various component of the land and various issues it is being faced and the strategies and the solution how to conserve the land from the various ecological imbalance. Thank you, Professor. I request you to take the podium.
Thank you, Dr. Ramesh. I'm indeed very happy.
Sorry, are we able to hear, sir?
It's very clear, sir. You can talk.
Me? Repeat it.
Presentation is visible, sir. You can continue, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ramesh. I'm indeed very happy to be here to speak on the theme of this year, land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience. Actually, the slogan is our land, our future. Of course, in the last part of my program, I will also elaborate on the issues faced in Puducherry. Now, this for the beginners, the World Environment Day, as you all know, is one of the biggest international event celebrated by the United Nations Environment Program. It was started in 1973, but it was planned in 1971, and it has grown to be the largest global platform for environmental outreach. It is being celebrated by millions of people across the world on June 5th. The main purpose of the program is to raise awareness about the critical environmental issues, right from the climate change, which is threatening the very existence of the planet Earth, up to the chemical pollutions. Therefore, every year they choose a theme, they choose a slogan so that the awareness spreads all over the world. And also, every year this is being hosted by a nation, which provides a chance to share a spotlight on the solutions emanating from the particular nation, which is spread to all other parts of the world. This year, restoring land, halting desertification, and building drought resilience is the theme. Now, this is part of the declaration by the United Nations of the ecosystem restoration decade. In 2021, it was declared. The decade following 2021 to 2030 is declared as the ecosystem restoration decade. So in this period, the entire generation, right from the old up to the young, they are involved in the restoration so that the damaged ecosystem can be restored to their original level. What is clear is that it has never been made more important to foster and support the energy, talent, and drive of the generation, particularly the young people, since most of the people are affected by climate change without the barrier of age, gender, region, or anything. What about the ecosystems? The ecosystems support life on Earth. We all know. The healthier the ecosystems are, the healthier will be the planet and its people. That's why the declaration by the United Nations, the ecosystem decade, it aims to halt and reverse the degradation of ecosystems on every continent and in every ocean. By that way, it will help to erase poverty, combat climate change, and prevent mass extinction of biodiversity. That's more important because biodiversity is the cornerstone of life, which is being eroded at a larger scale. So this decade will be also diverted towards saving the biodiversity to a larger extent. But the success depends on the part played by every section of the society. As I said earlier, now the time has come for taking up the challenge. The theme chosen for this year is desertification and drought, in particularly. We are united for the land, our legacy, our future, and it seeks to mobilize the society in support of the sustainable land stewardship. That means somebody should take the leadership so that this program will become a successful one. Every year, on the 3rd of the Saturday, this year it is on June 17th, it's also the 30th anniversary of the United Nations Convention to combat desertification. That's the UNCCD. That has declared the United Nations Combat Desertification Day on June 17th. It is one of the important convention because it is binding international treaty on land management and drought. And it is also one of the 3 conventions finalized in the Rio de Janeiro conference, along with the Climate Change Convention and Biodiversity Convention. Then, which country is hosting this? The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is hosting the World Environment Day 2024. Land restoration is a key pillar of the UN decade on ecosystem restoration, I told you. And it is a rallying call for the protection and revival of the ecosystems around the world. And why Saudi Arabia has chosen it? Because their problem is very acute. Not only acute, it has been chronic in the Arabian continent, particularly in Saudi Arabia. If we are to achieve the sustainable development goals, countries like Saudi Arabia, where the desertification and the land degradation has become very serious problem, they have to address this problem, and they are already addressing this problem, achieving success to a larger extent. Then let us know something about the land, because the slogan is our land, our future. And there is also another rider there. We are generation restoration, which we will see towards the end of the lecture. Land sustains life on earth. No, this is a very, very well-known fact. But there are several ecosystems like farmlands, forests, grasslands, savannas, peatlands, forest, and even mountain ecosystem, ocean ecosystem that provide the humanity all their needs, goods and services that make civilization possible. See, these landscapes are underpinned by the aquatic ecosystems like oceans, rivers, and lakes. Then they are also dependent on the water cycles and keep the land fertile. Yeah, fertile land will certainly support very, very good agricultural growth. The agricultural higher productivity means ensured food security for the people. But unfortunately, the world's all the ecosystems are under threat now. That's because of the unsustainable patterns of production and consumption, and they are driving the triple planetary crisis. What are the 3? Climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, and pollution of waste. Then when we say land, it is not the entire component of the land. More critically important is the top layer, what we call the soil. Yes, particularly the topmost layer, where the humus is very rich. That is important for agricultural productivity. Soil is a loose, weathered material on Earth's surface. We all know. To form 1 inch of the soil, it takes about 600 years of the weathering process, because it is created from the broken down bedrock, which is very solid, and it has to be exposed, and it gets weathered, broken down into small particles, and that forms the top layer of the soil. But soil is not very mere granules alone. The grains of soil are a mixture of weathered rock, decayed organic matter, mineral fragments, water, and air. That's what makes it fertile. Beyond that, there is also microbial activity in the soil. Some microorganisms make humus, which is very important, that makes soil fertile. Other organisms mix the soil and make space for water and air. Plants contribute most of the organic remains that form the humus. Litter is also the loose layer of the dead decaying plant materials which are on the surface, and they are decomposed by another group of organisms, what we call decomposers. They break down the remains of the dead organisms, like fungi, bacteria, worms, etc., contribute to decomposing process. But now we come to the point, desertification. What is desertification? The soil is fertile, therefore it supports vegetation. But when the soil becomes less fertile, it becomes arid, it is totally unproductive, it becomes a desert. Therefore, the process by which the vegetation in dry lands, arid and semi-arid lands, such as grassland, shrubland, decreases and eventually disappears, we call a desert is formed. How is desertification noticed? Desertification, there are several causes. One of the biggest environmental threats, as identified the UNEP, it is the land drying up due to reduced rainfall. And secondly, expansion of agriculture and poor irrigation facilities, addition of chemical fertilizer, overgrazing, deforestation, and ultimately climate change is exacerbating, it is complicating the process of desertification. Right now, around 2 billion people live in the drylands, which is vulnerable to desertification. That means it has not become a desert right now, but it has become less and lesser productive. If allowed, uncontrolled, it will become a desert sooner or later. So when the soil fails to support agriculture, what will the people do for food? They have to displace. They have to move from the place. Now already, several millions of people have migrated from the deserts, and by 2030, 50 million people are expected to migrate from the dry lands. If people cannot grow food, what will they do? So they will have a negative effect on the landscapes, wildlife, and human health, even when they go to newer places. Right now, 1/5 of the Earth's land surface, equivalent to 2 billion hectares, is degraded. That means it is becoming vulnerable to desertification. Every second, an equivalent of the 4 football fields of the healthy land becomes degraded, and it's in a year it adds up to 100 million hectares. Every second, an equivalent of the 4 football fields, which has added to 100 million year, is harming the life of about 3.2 billion people. Almost 40% of the world population being impacted by the land degradation right now. That means 40% of the brethren of the 720 crores of people are now having insecurity of food. So because of the droughts and desertification process, every year 55 million people are directly affected. What sort of people are they? It affects those who are least equipped to cope with. That means indigenous people, rural communities, small farmers, and extremely poor. Particularly, the women and the youth are affected because of the land degradation process. They are part of the 55 million people who are directly affected. Indirect effect the estimate will go up to 100 million or so. So if the land degradation remains unchecked, it could reduce the global food productivity by 12%, causing the food prices to soar up by 30% by 2040. This is an estimate by UNEP. So if we are able to restore at least 15% of the degraded lands, we can avoid 60% of the biodiversity loss, extinction of species. When you say land degradation, soil loss, what sort of losses are now estimated? There are two processes, either the quantitative loss or the qualitative one. When there is no vegetation at all on the soil, the wind and water play a very, very dirty role, and they remove large chunks of the soil, earth, and we call it erosion. On the other hand, there is another process which makes the soil less suitable for use. It becomes a qualitative change. The quantity remains, but the quality decreases. For example, loss of nutrient by leaching and addition of chemicals, fertilizers to the soil for agricultural purposes, which stay in the soil and cause pollution. So these residues will be causing chemical pollution. So generally, commercial establishments and very poor food production systems, they reduce the soil fertility and contribute to land degradation. But beyond that, even the human activities that lead to soil degradation are very, very important and glaring. See, overgrazing, overcropping, deforestation, unsustainable agriculture, urbanization are the causes. As I told you, wind and flowing water, how they remove soil, as you can see from this picture. So the deteriorations of the soil characteristics needed for the plant growth that emanates from soil degradation. Farming, ranching, and very poor, as I told you, the forestry practices can erode soil. But erosion is a natural process that helps to remove soil. But when it becomes a massive one, it becomes a problematic. It occurs more quickly than expected. It more quickly than that can be replaced. Then it becomes an environmental issue. Erosion can be gradual, but it is hard to detect. When it happens in a massive scale, then it attracts the attention. Then if that happens unhindered, how will the plots grow? That is the question, because agriculture is the kingpin of our survival. There are several techniques that can be applied over a longer period of time. Total removal of plant covers, it leaves the soil barren, exposed to solar radiation, excessive heat, and that makes the topsoil very, very brittle, and air also becomes thinner, and then it removes the top layer of the soil. What has been built over hundreds of years is removed by just a blow of wind. Another point is that crop growth. They don't leave any gap at all. Continuous growing in the same field. And also in several rows where they leave gaps in between, that exposes the soil to vagaries of weather. Plowing, when it is not done scientifically, especially in the hill stations, when it is in the slope, then it contributes to erosion. Monoculture in the plains, continuous culture of one variety of rice or wheat or any other crop plant in the same place for successive years will certainly render the soil very, very poor in nutrient quality. By this way, more than 90 billion hectares of the world's croplands now suffer from erosion and soil degradation. But the humanity needs productive land. When the population increases, then production also should increase. When larger areas are devoted to intensive agriculture, but very poor agricultural practices are followed, then as I tell you, the land degradation, soil degradation happens. Widely, excessive irrigation erodes precious soil, depletes aquifers, and especially in arid areas. Then soil pollution is another important factor, where irrigation and pesticide use, when it is unscientific, it lowers the soil quality. If you add fertilizer, it can improve the soil productivity in the short term for a particular season or the next season. But we add fertilizer continuously in the same field, then naturally it becomes less and less fertile. It becomes a fallow land. That can even pollute the soil in the long term. Adding extra water to the soil, the too dry soil, that can also add extra salts. When it evaporates, it leaves the salt on the surface and it becomes a fallow land. Then people are using pesticide for disease control. We cannot find fault with them. But in the short term, the pesticides can get rid of the bugs, but they can also contaminate soil and the groundwater. It is toxified. See here, excessive water locks, and when it leaves soil behind, and when it is thrown out, it also takes the top layer of the soil. It depletes the nutrients. It makes the soil friable, that means dry and susceptible to wind erosion. Nutrients are not restored by overcropping because the same type of nutrients are consumed by the same type of crop every year. So other nutrients stay, but the essential nutrients are depleted. Increased risk of crop failure becomes the order of the day. Then when it is barren, the wind erosion follows. Another factor that contributes to land degradation is water mismanagement. We have accessible water, potable water, water suitable for irrigation, but when it becomes polluted, it becomes unsanitary for human consumption, and when it becomes saltish, saline, becomes unsuitable for agricultural growth also. So unregulated water use for agriculture or industry at the expense of the general population is another factor of environmental concern. We are failing to harvest nature's bounty. We cannot blame the rainfall quantity. Even if the rainfall is below average, whatever falls on the earth's surface, if it is harvested properly, scientifically, and stored and used methodically, it can be a sustainable proposition. But we don't do that because the loss of water, our failure to save rainwater, makes a silent drain on the economy also. Think of what happened during the 2015 and 2021 floods in Chennai. So much water. But now they say there may be a shortage of water for drinking. Here you see, when water becomes more, it floods the streets. People stand in the rows, vacate their houses, and move away. It is the problem of plenty. But now, when there is no water, again people stand in the queues, carry water from wherever it is available, and then make use of it. See another scene. People are scrambling for a little water from the water tank. And poor people have to carry water from longer places, that to dirty water. So there is a problem of plenty and problem of non-availability also. What does it mean? That means we have failed to manage water resource. Water mismanagement is another important reason that contributes to land degradation. One more point is urbanization. When life becomes harder in the villages, people move in flocks to the cities and they establish their dwelling in whatever place that is available. On one side, you see multi-stories cropping up, and again you see large patches of the huts being developed. And what does it mean? They have occupied the barren land, which was available for some other purpose. The most important aspect nowadays, the scientists warn, is about the climate change that contributes to not only a number of the environmental impacts, but more particularly to the desertification process also. The problem of climate change, which we call in short the global warming, is because of the greenhouse effect, as you all know. The earth is warming and becomes unsuitable for several sustainable life activities. As far as the forests are concerned, it's a very important natural resource. What contributes to global warming means, first factor is deforestation. Another one is excessive energy use, particularly the fossil fuel usage. In forest, there are several ways by which the forest cover is being eroded. Shifting culture is one, where people grow crops in one season in one particular area, and they are fertilized. The soil is fertilized by the ashes of the previous burning, and they typically grow a particular crop for a particular season and for a few years also, and then they abandon it, move to the next patch where they again burn the process. So this is one way. Then natural forest fire or even man-made forest fire is another commonly used method for clearing forest. Especially this is a problem in Southeast Asia and tropical Africa. And there are large-scale plantations after deforestation. In Malaysia, we see oil palm, and again in America also oil palm plantations and rubber plantations, then even cattle ranches. So these are all reasons for clearing the forest. This is a view, the top view of the aerial view of the tropical rainforest. But when the forest is being degraded, it exposes the earth to vagaries of weather. A raging forest fire you see here. Then, so because of deforestation, not only the tree cover is being removed, but there are several attendant harmful effects also. More important is the extinction of the species. Species extinction is another factor. Scientists have calculated the extinction or disappearance of the species is about one species for every 20 minutes. So by the time we finish our program, at least 3 or 4 species would have been permanently removed from the Earth's surface. In the same 20 minutes, the humans are destroying at least 1,200 acres of forest. It doesn't stop with the removal of the tree cover alone. It again is equivalent to 180,000 tons of carbon dioxide that is still staying in the atmosphere, which would have been removed by the tree cover through the process of photosynthesis. That means less forest cover means more carbon in the atmosphere because the sink is disappearing, and that contributes to global warming. So the rainforests are very, very rich in biodiversity. The rainforests form only the 15 degrees on either side of the equator along the Earth's surface. But in that 15-degree belt, we call a tropical belt. In the tropical belt, at least 46% of the world's living terrestrial vegetation is residing. So if we take 4 square miles of the rainforest area, we find at least 1,500 different types of flowering plants, and in which 750 species of trees can be found. That is so rich in biodiversity. But this rainforest contributes to 25% of the total net global carbon emissions harvested, which will otherwise stay in the atmosphere. But unfortunately, the deforestation rate also has accelerated since the Industrial Revolution. As of 1947, there had been 15 to 16 million kilometers square of tropical forest. As I told you, which had about 40% of the total biodiversity. By 2015, about half of this has been destroyed. So, according to Food and Agricultural Organization, the annual rate of deforestation is about 1.3 million square kilometer per decade. What is the effect of deforestation? That contributes to not only biodiversity loss, but related to the theme of the 2024 drought and desertification also. When we say desertification, it is a type of land degradation, particularly in dry lands. In Puducherry, we don't have such a vast dryland area, but it is a global phenomenon, and in some parts of India also it is being experienced. Where the biodiversity has been totally removed, biological productivity is also lost because of the natural process. I have already listed the reasons for desertification: overgrazing, deforestation, harmful farming practices, excessive use of fertilizers and pesticide, and overdrafting of the groundwater, urbanization, and climate change. And when the air becomes warmer, it becomes thinner and it blows easily, and soil becomes brittle. It carries the top layer of the soil. You can see in the picture. Drier soils have the top layers which are consistently removed. When the removal takes place in larger quantity, we have a dust storm as we experienced in 1930s. Here you see the scene of the dust storm. That was experienced in the United States in the Great Plains. It was called the Dust Bowl Syndrome. It happened between 1930 and 1936. It was exacerbated or accelerated during the World War also. It was observed in Colorado, Kansas, Texas, and Oklahoma, New Mexico too. During the World War I, First World War, the troops needed wheat as a staple food in the battlefield. So it required a larger areas of cultivation, higher rate of production, so that the troops can have a regular assured supply of wheat for their survival. What they did was the agriculture was expanded. As a result, and it was over-cultivated. And excessive cultivation or over-cultivation of wheat for soldiers, but it was not accompanied by rainfall. So when the rainfall was not adequate, there was erosion of the topsoil. As a result, it became less fertile and people had to flee for survival. As a result of it, 1.2 billion tons of soil was lost during that period, equivalent to 100 million acres in the Great Plains of America between 1934 and 35, 1 year alone, where the drought was very, very severe. It was a record break for the drought. And the people who left their homelands for survival to other places, they were called Okies. This is another scene of the Dust Bowl. You have the case study here in the American Midwest. Because of the overuse of the land, as I told you, for agriculture purposes, it was followed by wind erosion and soil dust removed by the wind blowing, and many thousand kilometers it traveled. That is more important. And you can see the extent of the topsoil that was removed in one place, deposited hundreds of kilometers away, submerging so many structures. Then they adopted a different method to control the dust bowl. They started windbreaks, planting trees in several rows, thick rows of trees, so that the wind blow can be arrested and dust bowl cannot be traveled to different places. And Africa became the center point of desertification, because it was even before the phenomenon of global warming known. It was known for the desertification process. We know the Thar Desert and Gobi Desert, they are all existing even before the phenomenon of global warming became a talking point. In Northern Africa, they cut down trees for firewood purposes. Here, the homemade factor, where the wood was harvested mainly for cooking purposes, contributed to removal of the tree cover from the area. The result is the transpiration rate has decreased, rainfall has decreased, and the Sahara Desert has expanded. Similar deforestation is now occurring over much of the Africa, threatening the future also. What will be the result? The desert of the North, South, and East Africa will be expanding, leading to drought. Already, they have calculated since 2000, the year 2000, 29% of increase in the desertification process. So, coupled with the global warming, which has induced several changes in precipitation pattern, it is likely that people in much of the Africa also will be suffering from drought and starvation in the coming decades. Already, a large part of the Africa is under desert, and the desertification is alarming. This is another scene for soil degradation and desertification. So when the desertification becomes acute, it even threatens the survival of the animals, as you see here. Then it contributes to another problem of water scarcity also. People have to run for miles together. And in the deserted areas, water is not available but for the very, very faulty rainy season, where they get a mere 5 millimeter or 5 centimeter of rain every year. The World Health Organization has estimated about 150,000 millions of people are affected by the drought process in Africa every year. This is another result of the desertification process, where we see the Aral Sea. We call it Aral Sea, but it's not the sea, but it is a very, very large aquatic ecosystem which was thriving very well. It was about 40-meter deep freshwater body. The area is 68,000 square kilometer. That's why it was called a sea, though it is only a freshwater body. It supported a robust fishing industry, and it became a lifeline for communities for decades together living along the shore. But now the Aral Sea has disintegrated into two distinct bodies of water, leaving abandoned port cities stranded amidst ship relics. That's what we see in the picture. What was one covered by water is now barren. That is the part of desertification process. This tragic transformation unfolding over a single generation, it has happened only during the past 50 years, speaks volumes about the headless exploitation of nature's resources. The Aral Sea began declining in 1960s and ultimately dried up in 2010. Why? Overhasting of the rivers and faulty irrigation projects, mainly for cotton production. And the result was a shrinkage of the water holding area and increase in salinity. As a result, the shores also decreased, and miles away from the deserted port towns now reveal a very harsh, inhospitable landscape, as we see. So here, sand and dust storms have taken place, but now they have replaced the cool breezes and the lapping waves, which was very, very pleasing when the Aral Sea was vibrant. Then we saw the deforestation. Then it also contributes to landslides when the rainfall is very, very heavy. We know the Uttarakhand story. When the cloudburst happened, then large chunk of the mountainous areas had caved in, washing away miles and miles of the habitation. See here the pathetic scenes of the Uttarakhand speaks volume of the deforestation effects. Here we see Lord Shiva standing above the water surface, but because of the cloudburst, almost he is drowned. Such is the severity of the cloudburst, which is causing large-scale erosion of soil and contributing to excessive flooding. Now, what is the scenario all over the world? The picture shows, depending upon the intensity of the redishness, where it is completely desertic, hyper-arid, arid, almost reaching the desertification stage, semi-arid, now where it is becoming less and less fertile, and dry subhumid. Of course, the productive is there, but still it is not appreciable. And humid regions. You see, large parts of the world is being under the scanner of desertification process. The desertification stops not with the affecting the lives of the people alone, but it also affects the economy, because bringing degraded ecosystems back to life, it can save ecosystem services by the different ecosystems, a forest, coastal and agriculture ecosystem, by US dollars 30 billions. For every dollar spent, we can save at least $30 in turn. Restoring 1 billion hectares of the degraded land, right, it can achieve sustainable development goals, which is the goal for ensuring life security for the people. About 21 goals have been already framed by the United Nations, and now they are being implemented by the different countries, for which the arresting the deforestation, arresting the desertification will contribute to a larger scale. Therefore, the target of arresting the desertification process was fixed by the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework in 2022, where they have planned at least 30% of the degraded terrestrial, inland water, and marine and coastal ecosystems are to be under effective restoration. By 2030, they expect the work to be completed. They should be restored to their original level of productivity. But that certification process is a very serious challenge, where the restoration is not so easy. Humanity's ability to survive in many areas of the world, they can survive. But unless it provides the essential needs, how can they survive? Therefore, we have to avoid, we have to reduce, and we have to reverse the process of desertification. That only will ensure sustainable development, achieving the goal by 2030. Now, under the scan of desertification, 500 million people live in vulnerable areas. That has been calculated in 1980. But people living in already degraded and desertified areas are already negatively affected by climate change. As I told you, they even migrate to safer places. They become environmental refugees, like Okies. So there has been a 29% increase in area since 2000, as we have seen. But such a process aggravates the economic, social, and environmental problems. What are the problems? Poverty, which affects the poor. Health, again, affects the poor. Food security affects the poor. Loss of biodiversity affects the entire humanity. Water scarcity, forced migration, and lowered resilience to climate change or natural disasters. This will be the result. Then when you have seen the causes and the effects, then what about the solutions for this? Part of this also will be applicable to our region also. But Earth needs a helping hand now. It is under crisis. The degradation is not inevitable. It is happening, but with a little effort, it can be arrested. We have the power and the knowledge to reverse the harm and restore the environment, but only if we are prepared to act now. The ecosystem restoration, what the process is called, is becoming the more and more urgent need of the hour. Many countries have realized this. Between 765 million and 1 billion hectares of land across the world are earmarked for restoration. So anywhere between 765 to 1 billion, depending upon the place, are earmarked for restoration. That is the target. Almost half of this area is in the sub-Saharan African region. That's why the commitment of the Asian and Latin America becomes more in the process. So we cannot remain silent. We have to reverse the trend. What can we do for conservation of soil? In the agricultural sector, we can have several schemes depending upon the plain. It is plains or the hills. We have several methods like contour planting, terracing, intercropping, and crop rotation, and stopping till farming. Planting different crops of the same field is not desirable. Therefore, you have to rotate the crop as we see in the picture. That will ensure the nutrient quality of the soil. Then if you conserve the tillage, you don't harvest it up to the root system, leave a little bit of it, then it will contribute to mulching process also. Then step like cultivation in the hill stations, contour plowing in the hill stations, establishing windbreaks on the desert areas are all methods for arresting soil degradation. But as a corollary, the loss of biodiversity is of great concern to the humanity. There are 5 important causes of biodiversity loss: pollution, habitat loss, overexploitation, invasive species, climate change. So if you remove the habitat, all other problems will follow. Overexploitation of the particular area for monoculture, then it leaves the place for invasion of the foreign species or alien species, what we call invasive species, and the effect of the climate change follows. Extreme weather affects it, leading to degradation. Now, there are several methods of biodiversity conservation, but of this, wildlife sanctuaries, national park, biosphere reserves, zoological parks, botanical gardens, gene banks, cryopreservation. And as far as Puducherry is concerned, we have only 2 important aspects: the botanical garden and the sacred goose, about which we shall see later. But still, biodiversity conservation can be ensured by arresting soil degradation and desertification. Then another agricultural practice that is becoming popular nowadays is organic farming, where instead of chemical fertilizer, we shall lower the quality of the soil. Vermicomposting, green leaf manure, and then manures, biofertilizers are all contributing to organic farming. And that is also supplemented by crop rotation, biological management, animal husbandry to make agriculture as a desirable practice. What will happen when the water management becomes a problem? We have to store rainwater. So we can store it in a pond or harvest in the houses. Rainwater harvesting, that is very, very critical for water management. Otherwise, we have to blame our mismanagement practices only for the non-availability of potable water to the people. The target has been already fixed. We have to restore at least 1.5 billion hectares of degraded land by 2030, so that the food security can be assured to the people. There are several mantras which are being followed for this purpose. We restore a land, regenerate it, renew the land, reuse it, regreen it, rewilding it. And these are powerful mantras of the generation of people who are involved in the process. But unfortunately, our lifestyle has changed, consumption pattern has changed, and it has caused business, investors, policymakers to listen to the cry from the environment. But there are several countries which have succeeded in restoring damaged ecosystems. It may be a forest or a grassland or a wetland. So they are forming world restoration flagships. A series of pioneering initiatives which are demonstrating how the restoration delivers a wide range of environmental benefits that ensures increased productivity of the land. It removes the carbon from the atmosphere, what we call carbon sequestration, and biodiversity conservation. This is another method of restoring, planting a seedling in a barren land. When it happens in millions, it regenerates the forest. A proper water management, even when the water is scanty and rainfall is poor, if we have a proper or foolproof water storage system, then water management becomes an efficient tool. There are several success stories for this. Restoring forests in the Sahel region through seeding native trees are chosen to fight back desertification there. And construction of the artificial reefs as a foundation for underwater ecosystem has also been tried and is successful in several countries. And reclamation of the Thar Desert. These are all yielding good results with the important scientific inputs, new technology, and involvement of the people. That's more important. In Saudi, they have the Green Initiative to combat land degradation and desertification. And it has started the Saudi Green Initiative. It aims to save 30% of the country's land into nature reserve. That means most of the area is deserted, and now they are trying to reverse the trend. How do they do it? By planting 10 billion trees. By that way, they are planning to restore 40 million hectares of the degraded land so that it can be saved from drought, desertification, and land degradation in the near future. Here is a method. This is the deserted area. What do you see? There are circles. It is not a design, photographic design or photoshopping design, but what we see here are circles of the crops as part of the restoration of the desert area. What they do is, they choose certain areas, have intensified tree plantation in that area, and that becomes a green reserve, a green circle, crop circle, which will assert desertification process. That was in the Asian region. What about India? In India also, the Thar Desert, you all know, it is a hyper-arid region where water scarcity is a major problem for the survival of the people there. A man called Lakshman Singh evolved a novel method in Thar. He is called Waterman of Thar Desert. What he did was, there was only about 5 centimeters of rain every year, and whenever it rains, sometimes it will also be intensified over a shorter period. Whether it is shorter period or over a staggered period, whatever water has fallen down, he started collecting it in a reservoir. Suppose the water is overflowing in that area, he had an interconnected water storage system so that whatever water is falling is not wasted or allowed to dry, and it is stored in the adjacent areas. That means a staggered aquatic storage system was designed by him. As a result, when the soil ecosystem changed through succession and the soil becomes fertile, and he was able to ensure water supply for the people for 3 years in succession if water is collected in one season. He is hailed as a waterman of Thar, and he has received several United Nations awards also. Such is the success of the conservation effort by a man. When a man can succeed, why not a community? That is a question posed by the United Nations Environmental Day. But unfortunately, most of the governments and even the well-known people, educated people, do not give proper attention to the environmental problems as we see here. That means they are showing an ostrich-like attitude. Whatever happens to the environment, let it happen. They take it that way. but that should not be there because it is our land. Our future depends on the productivity of our land. So we have to ensure the safety. That's why the United Nations has declared one day, the third Saturday of June, as the World Day to combat desertification and drought. Addressing desertification and land degradation and desert is not a simple problem. It requires commitment from the people. How can we do it? We have to make peace with the nature. We cannot turn back time. So we can regrow forest. We can green our cities. Even our Department of Environment, Technology and Science, Technology and Environment has prepared a Green Puducherry mission, a wonderful action plan for greening Puducherry. And we can establish green campuses. Even in the houses, we can have green balconies, green rooftops, and green gardens in the urban areas. So this way we can contribute to a healthy environment. But the serious problem, as I pointed out, the climate change is being aggravated every day, and we have to mitigate climate change as an immediate concern. If we do not arrest climate change by 2050, at least the temperature is expected to increase by 1.60 degrees, and even it go up to 4 degrees, threatening the life systems. Therefore, what we have to do is reduce the fossil fuel usage. We have to adopt alternate energy sources instead of the fossil fuels. We have to enhance the green cover. Then afforestation, wherever it is possible in largest areas. Even in Puducherry, they have identified at least 18,000 hectares of the area where the forestry can be extended. Then agroforestry is another important way of greening the land. Tree plantation wherever it is possible. That's why we are targeting the sacred groves here. So we have to choose when the tree comes, the particular species which is suitable for the particular area. You cannot plant any tree in any area. But planting a tree definitely contributes to arresting global warming and mitigating the climate change. You can see the effort by an African girl. She is called Elian Wanjiku Cliston. She is called the tree girl of Africa. In Kenya, she was born. Right from the 4th year, she realized the importance of trees. See, at the age of 4, she knew the importance of tree plantations. She learned it from their colleagues or from their parents, and she started a campaign. Not as a single person, what she started as a single entity. She collaborated with the agencies, and when she was 13, she could plant 1.3 million trees in Africa with the community support. So tree plantation, if taken as a serious initiative by a single girl, it can result in 1.3 million trees in about 10 years. See what success can be achieved by the contribution from different individuals from all over the world. Of course, the initiative came from Wangari Maathai. She was the environment minister in Kenya. She was a social, environmental, and political activist. She founded the Green Belt movement. She planted 1 billion trees to save planet Earth long back. And this girl also joined the scheme and has now earned a name in the history. All of us can reduce, reuse, recycle, thereby arresting the climate change. Choose reusable products instead of disposables. Buy products with minimal packaging. Help recycle paper, plastic, newspaper, glass, and aluminum cans. And by recycling half of your household waste, we can save at least 2,000 pounds of the carbon annually. Of all the methods which we have explained, planting tree becomes the most important and the most probable and possible by an individual too. So, but use a resilient plant material. That's what I said. Every tree in every place is not suitable. The particular soil, particular climate, suppose only a particular species. So the best tree species for reforestation should be chosen because that becomes resilient to the vagaries of environment and grows healthily. And also, you must ensure a significant amount of genetic diversity. Planting one particular species alone in one particular area, it becomes a monoculture, no diversity at all. It not only unpleasant to the site, it also doesn't contribute to biodiversity conservation. Therefore, this type of activity can make population less susceptible to pests and climatic change. Because when you grow one species in particular area, it can lead to what is called the inbreeding depression. Yeah, there is no exchange of genetic material between the trees which are present there. That's why the same tree, even if it is from a different place, can have a different gene to contribute. So this region where it becomes under that tree cover is expected to change in future from the dry region to a greener region. Our land, our future. Okay, that's what we know. But another rider in the slogan is we are generation restoration. What do you mean by that? The present generation should direct all its efforts to the restoration of the damaged ecosystems. That is a clarion call given by the Environment Day 2024 theme. Here is a girl, young girl. She is becoming a UNCCD land hero, like the girl, Kenyan girl I told you. So they expect the youth to contribute to the restoration program. There is a global voice from every region, and it becomes a combined effort. It contributes to the success all over the world. But at the heart of every individual, there should be motivation and energy that contributes to a shift in the mindset. That's more important. This is our land, this is our future, and therefore our contribution is important. Our role is important. That's where the individual's role comes. Now, several individuals all over the world have taken up the project and they have succeeded in several ways also. They have created creative, hopeful, transformative solutions as that Kenyan Gale has devised and that contributed to restoration of the habitats. So whatever is possible to do for combating desertification, land degradation, arresting, and also greening the surface. But choose one particular event at least, green cover. Concentrate on that. If possible, plant a tree. A single banyan tree prevents erosion. It absorbs 2.2 tons of carbon dioxide and releases 1.2 ton of oxygen. That means carbon footprint is very high. So plant a tree, join a billion tree campaign. If you have the means to plant a tree, start digging right now. But there are too few of them, not many, to counter the effects of the carbon dioxide buildup in the atmosphere. Therefore, the contribution from every youth is expected. Now, this type of activity, what we have seen at the global level, is also overlapping the Puducherry's environment. As far as Puducherry's environment scenario is concerned, we have several ecosystems, if not all. We have the aquatic ecosystem. There have been at least 500 ponds in the Puducherry region in the history. There have been 84 lakes, of which 2 lakes are very, very big lakes. The wetland ecosystem was very, very thriving in Puducherry region. Agriculture was thriving in Puducherry at the time of our liberation, what we call independence in 1954. And it's 44,000 hectares of land was under cultivation. under agricultural ecosystem, we can say. But a calculation in 2017 says this has shrunken to just 9,700 hectares within just 3 years, from 13 to 9,017 hectares. Such a drastic decline. Why? It has not only contributed to land degradation, but land disappearance for non-agricultural purposes, diversion. Housing is the major problem here. So several housing sites are blooming in Puducherry, where the conversion of agricultural land for the non-agricultural purposes, it not only affecting the food security of the people, because even during the French regime, about 300 years back, Puducherry and Karaikal were the agriculturally highly productive regions. Of course, Yanam is totally different. Yet, between Pondicherry and Karaikal, the Puducherry region's productivity was not supplying to the captive population, but means what the rice quantity, what is produced in Puducherry region, was not able to meet the requirements of the Puducherry population, Puducherry people. So they had to either get it from Karaikal, sometimes they had imported from Vietnam also. So if that was the scenario, even when the population was less, but the land area was the same, there cannot be reduction in the total land area. And the area under cultivation also was higher. But still, the problem was very acute in French regime. The same scenario is being repeated in these years, and it will become a serious problem in near future also. So there is an urgent need for arresting this pernicious trend. Fortunately, even the area under cultivation is being carried on by motivated farmers only, because nowadays agriculture is not becoming a very favorable vocation by the people because of the labor problem and other issues. Again, irrigation is another problem, but fortunately, Puducherry could ensure a regular water supply for irrigation through borewells as well as through water stored in lakes. Apart from that, the Puducherry government also has built at least 17 bed dams in the river to store water, the storm water that comes during the flooding season. This has contributed to increase in the water table, and that has ensured the supply of potable water, quality water, even during the faulty seasons, summer. But this way, water conservation has been a successful event. And the government also has initiated steps to harvest the rainwater. All the buildings, especially the government buildings, have been directed to save rainwater, and they have been directed to ensure the installation of rainwater harvesting facility. But most, as you know, as it happens in every case of the government's program, the program is on paper, but we do not know how far it is effective in Puducherry. And therefore, the government may well design a proper management strategy so that a sequential screening program or inspection program will ensure proper rainwater harvesting by the government buildings as well as by the private buildings. Then again, the alternate power source in Puducherry, we are dependent mainly on the electricity from the METO grid. But the industries have been directed by the Department of Environment to ensure at least a part of the electricity usage comes from the alternative sources. Therefore, during our inspection to various industries, we could see the solar rooftop panels which are generating electricity. But the recent scheme announced by the Prime Minister to have the rooftop solar panels is a welcome scheme, And there is also a plan from the government to enhance the subsidy so that the house owners will come forward in larger scale. This program can be successful, thus mitigating or our dependence on the electricity supply from the native grid. This is another plan from the Puducherry government. But the green initiative, which has been designed by the Department of Science, Technology and Environment, has several novel ideas like one home, one tree, where they plan to supply seeds, seedlings, and ensure their proper growth by continuous monitoring. And rural afforestation in the wastelands and the green water bodies and the sand dunes. We unfortunately there are sand dunes along the coast of the Bay of Bengal in specific regions in Puducherry. Sand dunes are very, very important because they are arresting the wind flow. They are the wind breaks. Therefore, they must be conserved by having a plant cover continuously monitored by the department. They have a plan for that also. Greening the sand dunes is part of their program. And another program from wasteland to greenland. And already they have identified about 39,000 square meters of land in various places in Puducherry, which are ready, which can be diverted for tree plantation. Then green water bodies, along the water bodies on the shores, they have specific trees could be grown. By this way, I should also mention about the mangrove species that are thriving very well along the Ariangopam River and the Tangathiti area. Of course, there had been some elements of mangroves which are growing in these areas earlier, but with the help from the Department of Forest, the Marine Biological Department from the Annamalai University has planted selected saplings of the mangrove species, and now you see a very luxurious growth of the marine vegetation along their banks. That's a wonderful sight. And of course, you can even see restoration of the mangrove vegetation in the Puducherry area. That's another initiative developed in Puducherry. Then urban plantation has been a very successful program. About 25 years back, all the streets were barren. But when I was a student in 1960s, I could see the Thespecia tree growing in all the streets, especially the Mission Street and the Beach Street. There we could see only the Thespecia trees is on either side. Only nowadays the calophyllum is growing. So it is very highly suitable for this environment. Thus, it's ensured greenery of Puducherry. But now they have been converted to concrete roads. Trees have been removed. But a good initiative from the government. Now we have urban plantation in so many streets which are looking green. These avenue trees not only adding to the beauty, but also contributing to the environment health. Then in Puducherry region, during our research program, we have identified several sacred groves. The sacred groves are places where the local deities, like Ayanar or Raman, is being worshipped by the local people. And that area is surrounded by a patch of vegetation. As we see in Puthupet, about 10 kilometers away on the East Coast Road. The vegetation there is being conserved or preserved, not by the scientific method, but by the belief of the people that this patch of vegetation is a property of the god. Not only the vegetation, the attendant animal survival, whatever the animals are found inside, are also the property of the god. Any damage to the biodiversity therein will be a sin committed by the people, and they will receive punishment for that sin. So this kind of belief where conservation is connected to the conventional belief system, is ensuring the survival of patches of greenery in Puducherry region in the form of sacred groves. But unfortunately, nowadays, the faith is giving to building temples, building concrete structure, rather than preserving the greenery in that area. What we see in many of the sacred groves is the removal of the tree cover to build additional temple complexes. This is really unfortunate. That's why the Green Initiative has also a component of restoration of the sacred groves, and with the kudos to the Department of Science and Technology and Environment for having a component of restoration of sacred groves as part of the Green Puducherry mission. A wonderful scheme, I should comment. Not only here, in Yanam region also we could see the mangrove elements there, but they are not being enriched by our human effort, but they had been surviving there for several years. But now we see several industries are being located in those areas, threatening their survival too. Then another initiative, it concentrates or it focuses on the green school campus program. That means schools are chosen and they are given every support, financial and other support by the department, so that wonderful greenery is maintained. I should mention here, there are 3 or 4 schools in Puducherry region which are maintaining wonderful gardens, not only gardens of ornamental plants, but also the herbal gardens, also the tree plantation. And they have also achieved several awards for their efforts. That should become widespread, and that will happen if the Green School program is expanded to cover more and more schools in Puducherry region. Then this commitment is also extended to industries, where the industries, as a condition, they have been directed to establish greenery of local species, at least 10 to 30% of their area. That those green campuses not only ensure the very healthy environment for the workers, but also contributes to the declination or global warming. Oh, what about you are speaking about houses, schools, and industries? What about the office? There are about 11 autonomous bodies functioning in Puducherry. And these offices also have several vacant spaces around them. And the department is planning to encourage them to establish greenery in those places. Therefore, the focus on Puducherry is on ensuring greenery around Pondicherry, so that its added advantage of arresting pollution will ensure a healthy environment for the people. As I told you, the agriculture sector has to be concentrated. The green initiative programs have to be intensified. And the coastal ecosystem, of course, there had been some difficulties in the coastal management program because of the views of the fishermen community. But when it becomes a reality, artificial coral reefs also being planned for the security, food security, economic security of the fishermen community, that will also ensure a better life for those people. So such is the environmental scenario. We have a very healthy, very good air. Of course, the water problem is becoming acute nowadays because of the incursion of salinity along the coastal areas, where supplementary efforts are being made by the government to draw water from the other storage pockets and supply it to the people, needy people. But what we know is even the interior areas are affected by the TDS content, which makes it less potable. So this is expected to become an important problem in future, and the growth of industries indirectly contributing to the pollution. But fortunately, there have not been any alarming scenario so far. But the establishment of the green industries is gaining importance instead of the chemical industries, where the government has already showed a negative trend or negative approach for sanctioning the chemical industries. So such a cautious approach is certainly appreciable to ensure the healthy and happy environment in Puducherry. And with this, I think we have seen the various aspects of the theme as well as of the slogan, where the our land, our future. Again, in general and in specifically to Puducherry region, to know something about the environmental issues. And that way, I think we are expecting the World Environment Day to augur well for the humanity on June 5th. Let us all join together to make the World Environment Day celebration a grand success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I now request Balaji, Senior Project Associate, to deliver the vote of thanks. Sorry, I request Santa Lakshmi, Senior Project Associate, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening, all. I thank all the participants for joining in this webinar. A special thanks to our speaker, Dr. Ramanujam, retired professor, Kanjama Munivar Center for Postgraduate Studies, Puducherry, for sharing his expertise and knowledge in the environment of Puducherry and individual behavior towards the green Puducherry. So we value your time and effort in the delivering this webinar, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Also, I thank our member secretary PPCC for delivering his introductory remarks, and I also thank our department director and senior scientific officer for their support and encouragement in the organizing this webinar for the celebration of World Environment Day 2024. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll wind up the webinar, sir.